Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healing Art After Hours. I'm Shauna Robson with Creating Space Coastal, and in this video, we are going to be doing the journal prompt. If you could be any shape, what would you be and why? And we're going to play around with creating your own tangles with some easy filler shapes and things that you can use. And we're also going to do an exercise of creating a self-portrait out of the shape that you chose for your journal prompt. So please join us if you're interested in seeing how to create your own tangles and to create yourself out of your favorite shape. Let's get started. So hopefully you guys had a chance to download and print the grid paper, and you'll find, especially because there are a lot of patterns that include a grid in them, so that'll help with practicing those if you want to, learn designs. But the other reason, hold on, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Oh, maybe not. No, I think it's fine like that. Okay. But the other reason I wanted to do the graph paper is because I wanted to, like I mentioned before, I want to just talk about the building blocks of drawing, just general drawing, but tangle drawing in particular, because there are different types. As I mentioned last week, there's the sort of mindless doodling where you're just kind of doing it as a second activity. And then there's the more intentional doodling, which is what Zen Tangle is. And then tangle art can be, whatever you want it to be. But typically you're still intentionally trying to create, you might maybe even more intentionally, you're trying to use the patterns for a particular piece of art. So I do want to encourage you to always, give yourself leeway, but if you are trying to practice your skill, your hand-eye coordination skill, the graph paper can kind of help you, and it can also help you just explore different patterns. And that's what I wanted to talk with you about first. So I'm just going to grab just an extra fine Sharpie, and remember the days of dot-to-dot arts, where you had all those numbered dots, and then you had to connect the dots, and it created a picture, and you didn't always know what it was going to be. Well, that's one of the things that I want you guys to play around with tonight. So I have both graph papers here. One's just bigger, so it's just a little bit easier, but it has smaller dots in between, and then this one is just a smaller grid. So the first thing I wanted to just say is that most drawing, actually, let me just get a blank piece of paper. Drawing is really either you put the pen down and you lift and you make a dot, or you put the pen down and then you travel and you make a line, and that's between 2 points, right? Or you can put the pen down and then make an arc, a curved line. Now this curved line can be sort of between these 2 points, but also there's a third point somewhere telling you where this arc is going to peak, right? So now you have like 3 dots. And if you follow that, you're going to create an arc. Now, if my dot's up here and I do a smooth line, I get a higher peak. And if my dot's here, it's a smaller peak. And so that's pretty much it. Those are the basic building blocks. You're either going to move in a straight line or move in a curved line. And as you connect several dots together, you create a shape. So if I want to create an S shape, you might say, oh, but there's more than just an arc. But really, it's just several arcs. So if I do an S shape, it's an arc this way, and then it's an arc this way, right? So now I know it's looking like we're back in geometry, but I mean, that is really, if you think about how a computer works, it has limited points that it can make, at least, back in the day. Now it can do a lot more. Remember dot matrix printers, where they were very limited, they had to follow these dots. So you had to draw everything within the dots. Now, if I have 3 points, let's do this again, and I don't do a smooth line, I do just straight lines, and then I can just connect that, and then I create more of a triangle. But if I take those same 3 dots, and maybe this one I go in a straight line, and this one I do a curve, and this one I do a curve, now I have a shark fin. So that's what I want to play around with, is if every time that we do it, we change what it is, we get a different design. It's still 3 points, and we do either a straight or an arched line, you're going to get different shapes. So I wanted to play around with that on our graph paper. You can pick a number of points, and again, if we did it with 4 points, I'm going to use the bigger graph paper now, but if I did it with four points now in a box, I can randomly, oops, trying to have it so you guys can see, but then my pen doesn't write. I can go straight, straight, and then I can do an inward, concave, and then I can do an outward. And I can say, oh, what is that? That looks like an axe, the head of an axe. So it's kind of a fun thing to do and see what types of shapes you can make if you just change up how you connect those dots. If I make them all arcs outward, then I make a circle. If I'm all inside, I make this little sort of, I don't know, concave star. I don't know how to describe that exactly. And then everything else is sort of a mix of those things. So for starters, just play around. If you have the graph paper, just play around with different numbers of points, and just go from straight lines to concave or arced lines and see what kind of shapes you come up with. Just as a warm-up exercise. It's like a little ice cream cone. So play around with some primary shapes, and then inside each of these shapes, then we can play around with patterns inside, but also play around with them as a pattern piece. And that's going to be the next exercise that I want to do. I wanted to show you some common fillers that are used for a lot of the tangle patterns. And all you have to do is change up which shape you use to get a different look. So remember when I asked you if you read the journal prompt, if you were a shape, which shape would you be? And why? And that would be something that you could journal about in your written journal. And mine was round because I've always been drawn to circles. And when I evaluated that, you know, I'm kind of a curvy, round person. And also people say I can be bubbly, so that works. And I also love water, so I love bubbles and the idea of water. And the other thing I love about circles is they're pretty resilient. You know, they keep rolling. They can just bounce right over a bump in the road. And I've had many bumps in the road of life. And I just kind of roll over, go with the flow. So I appreciate my roundiness. of, because I think it implies some flexibility and motion. So you don't have to share your findings. You certainly can if you want, but pick whatever that shape is, and then do the exercises that I'm going to be showing using the shape that you picked. So you'll understand more when I get started. But let me grab a blank sheet here. I thought I had one. Oh, here we go. I'm ready. Now, on those, if you purchase the notes, all of these templates come in there. I have some templates that are different sizes. I have, this one's a 4x5 grid, and I use this to practice different patterns. And then I have a bigger one that's 3x4, so whatever size. So just be aware that that's in there if you're interested. Or you can just draw them out or put them in your, you can just put them inside your journal, you know, draw lines exactly like Sweden. So I'm going to just, in each of these, I'm going to just do a little exercise and then just follow along with your shape of choice. Okay? challenge that I wanted to do with you guys is to take your shape that you designated as the shape that represents you, and try doing a self-portrait. Now, Sri's already ahead of the game. But do a self-portrait, whether it's just your face, or you could do, you know, your whole body or whatever, some representation of you using your shape that you picked. So you can make them really small if you want to make, you know, the eyelash. If you're, let's say you have squares, you could do little tiny squares as eyelashes, or you can even use the dots, just using dots anywhere that you want to. But try using that shape and see if you can come up with something that represents you by using the shape that you picked, if that makes sense. And I thought that'd be a fun challenge. So if you guys are up for that, I can start mine for the next 15 minutes, and then, or you can work on whatever your heart desires, but I'm going to work on that, and then we'll do show and tell. And then if you find my journal. Now, I haven't worked with this paper, so I'm not sure. This is the journal, the mixed media, so I'm going to see how that works with doing my tangles. In this case, I am going to start using my microns because I do really like changing up the size of my tips. I think it helps immensely, especially if you're doing fine detail. And I have everything from 005, and I do recommend, I mean, you don't have to have every single number, but I have 005, and I'll just show you. That's little tiny. Let's see if I can get it to, it's so tiny it won't even zoom in. I don't know if you can, I can't get it to, there we go. Look at how tiny that is. And then that's compared to the biggest, which is a 1, or really the brush tip, but the 1, you can see how fat that is. And that's more like the extra fine of the Sharpie. Maybe that's closer to an 8, and then I even have a brush tip. So, all right. So I'm going to do this in marker, so it's going to be what it's going to be. I'm committed to it just being what it's going to be.
just wanted to show you the finished project after the workshop. I did add a few more details and some writing and also some color with Inktense pencils. So there you go.
Thank you everyone for joining me, and please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you find this content helpful. And as always, happy creating!